Hi, welcome to yet another podcast. I will now move into the minefield of Christian faith. Are you a Christian? Do you want to remain a Christian, or do you dare to face a challenge to your faith? I am not a missionary of any other faith. This is absolutely about something entirely different. You may have been rubbed a little bit by the last podcast about shamanism. So if you wish to protect your faith, remain unchallenged, I give you a second to quit this podcast. Okay. The Christian religion is based on the life of a certain Yeshua, who we usually call Jesus, and who walked his sandals in Palestine about 2000 years ago. As the story goes, he was born in a stable around 4 to 6 years before we started to count the years anew, most probably in the early spring and not in December, when his birth is celebrated. The celebration at this time of the year is an usurpation of the pagan celebration of the winter solstice. The Church has stolen most pagan celebrations by placing the Christian celebrations at the times of ancient pagan ones, just as it has placed its churches on the exact geographical places where pagan holy places were situated. The Christian Church is in this sense a thief. Not only so, it is also a huge falsifying institution. The boys birthed in a stable copy the births of several pagan deities' births in caves. As the story goes, the young Yeshua spent several years in Egypt. He was educated by the Jewish community of therapeutes in Alexandria, a certain sect of Judaism, even though he was not a Jew, but an Aramean. His education continued under Egyptian sages, and then his uncle, the famous Joseph of Arimathea, took him to southern England, where he learned shamanism and the advanced use of mushroom, such as the red-capped fly agaric. Joseph was a tin merchant transporting tin from Britain through Europe over the Mediterranean Sea to the Middle East, so he knew. Returning to Palestine at the age of about 30, he was a well-educated both shaman and Pharisee. This red-capped mushroom is a powerful psychoactive when correctly used. Known all the way back to Sumerian culture and traded from indigenous peoples in Siberia and Scythia. At the time of Jesus, it was well known in the region where he worked. Yeshua was part of an ancient mushroom cult that derives its name from a certain mystical state of consciousness attained by the use of mushroom. This state, the Christos state, provides visions beyond the material and is used for initiations where the individual is taken through the realms of death and resurrected into life with some new insights. This is how a different story goes, and there is more. Who do you think created the Christian religion? For sure, it was not Yeshua. He had no such intention. It was Paul, and he knew well that all the teachings given by Yeshua to his close fellows, the so-called disciples, that were about visions, about shamanic competence, including the art of healing. All built on several thousand years of pagan tradition. Therefore, he had no hesitation to include some pagan magic into what was to become Christianity. One example is the transformation at the Eucharist of the symbolic, magical level. The magic is what the Church teaches as transubstantiation of bread and wine into Christ's blood and body. An act of magic being performed at every Mass by a powerful, dominating priesthood, twisting the minds of their gullible congregations, often referred to as sheep, a fitting description. Now let me pick up again where I left and return to the main issue of this podcast, the practice of the mushroom. From where does this insane idea, contrary to all preaching, come? In the 1940s and 50s, a huge archaeological dig started at the caves at Qumran in Palestine. They were unearthed what is known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, a number of documents dating from around 100 BCE to 100 CE, covering the times that our hero walked the land. Immediately the Roman Catholic Church feared that they might contain some controversial information, an imminent danger to their dogmatic teachings. Do not forget that the Church is the greatest book burner in history, scrupulously erasing everything that might threaten its dogmatic basis of power. You may find literature that describes how the Church sent high-ranking clergy to keep those scriptures under lock and key as long as they investigated them, to avoid the leakage of any controversial information that might challenge faith. Some scientists of special competence were, however, allowed to take part in this study. Yet they were assigned to only 1 or 2 scrolls each, as the work was compartmentalized in order to avoid cross-referencing. Heresies might lurk on those pages. One of the scientists allowed to work on these scrolls was Gianmarco Allegro, an expert linguist in the ancient languages of the region and famous for his translation of the Copper Scroll, which however contains nothing of religious significance. After a while he grew impatient with the ecclesiastic's secrecy, and with some assistance he managed to get the scrolls photographed and circulated to scientists all over the world. The rabbit had jumped out of the hat and out of the clerical magician's control. This angered the Church, yet he would soon anger more than the Church. Being an exceptional linguist, he managed to track down the etymological roots of the number of not well understood words found in the scrolls as well as in the Bible. One of those words was the Greek word Christos. Remember, the New Testament was written in Greek, not so the scrolls. They were in ancient languages like Aramaic, the language Yeshua spoke. No wonder the Church wanted to lay their hands on them. After several years of tedious work, Allegro had cracked the Christos back to its Sumerian root, tab, bali, to dip. In Christianity the word is said to mean the anointed one. In ancient times, kings only were anointed. The act is an old pagan ritual marking out the chief or head of a tribe. Then anointing Yeshua was a huge assault on the reigning Jewish monarch, puppet of Romans. It simply could not go unpunished. We know what followed. Allegro also traced the Greek word penteros, that in the New Testament refers to the red-capped figure Annas, back to a Sumerian word Barbara, which signifies the red fly agaric. This is the psychoactive mushroom used for millennia by indigenous peoples in every area where it grows, even far away to the Middle East, to where it was imported ever since Sumerian times. Allegro had documented the connection with heavy linguistic support in his book The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross from 1970, where he also says that, quote, the early Jews were well aware of the original mushroom nature of the Christian cult, unquote. This implies that the Christos cult existed centuries before the appearance of Yeshua. Allegro thus pulls the carpet away under the entire New Testament. Needless to say, he was almost immediately excluded from academia and opposed by church authorities. Now you may say this, maybe even more astonished. What was the anointment all about? What was it? Truly, the anointment of the king or the chief was a symbolic act intended to ensure the fertility and well-being as well as that of the society of which he was the symbolic head. Yahweh was originally a fertility god. It was not only oil, it had three components. The extract of the mushroom to ensure the leader's vision, semen to ensure fertility, and oil to soften the mix. This is what was smeared on the front of Yeshua too, and symbolically correct, by a woman. Note well that all this is symbolic magic, pagan in origin and far removed from Christianity, yet considered of symbolic importance. This symbolism derives from the mushroom's resemblance to both the male and the female genitalia as it grows. The Church and the Christian religion have picked up on everything as useful to its own ritual magic and suppressed everything else, burning not only books but also people considered heretics, often men and women with pagan knowledge. Today the Church has become a significant center of power in the mind of the masses via indoctrination, bringing with it political pressures in an extremely dark and conservative direction. Even so, I will be the last one to say that religion is worthless. It carries some ethical rules of living that are truly valuable and important. Yet the Christian rules of our modern world seem just appreciate religion as a pillar of support for their dirty power politics and warfare, killing away as they go. So much for Christianity.